When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
All right, hello YouTube. Welcome back to the Grease Comedy YouTube channel. Today's video, I wanted to talk about some of the news that's been coming out about season 2 of House of the Dragon. It seems like HBO might have done some self-sabotage to their own show. And what do I mean by that? Well, it seems like HBO hasn't been doing so hot in terms of subscriptions and revenue and all that stuff. And it seems to maybe have affected HBO. It seems like from a lot of reliable sources that HBO cut the original script, which was going to be about 10 episodes. The writing had been pretty much done. And then right before they were done, it seemed to be that they just cut 2 episodes. And so I want to talk about how that actually affected season 2 and if that was the root cause of most of the issues of season 2. But before we get into it, if you did want to become a Patreon or a member, you do get videos early. As soon as I upload them to YouTube and schedule them for them to come out for the normal public, you get them right away. And also I do post exclusive videos for my Patreons and members. So let's talk about the cutting of 2 episodes. I don't think season 2 was that great. I think it was pretty okay in terms of the overall product. But to me, I think it is really jarring when you think about the ending of episode 8. It doesn't feel like the ending of a season. It feels very much like it's getting memed right now that it's like a trailer for season 3. It did feel like that. It didn't feel like there was a lot of conclusion or closure to the season, right? If you think about where a lot of the characters kind of end up in the season, the only one that I can really feel like has a conclusion, I feel like, of season 2 is Daemon, surprisingly. Even though Daemon, I don't love his conclusion, his actual, like, if you just take it for point blank, what actually happened and where he is at the end of it, like, that is a normal kind of conclusion, right? Him bending the knee to Rhaenyra, set that up for the next season. But outside of that, like, Rhaenyra doesn't feel like she was concluded that well. Alicent kind of feels like she wasn't really concluded. Like, I feel like there was more to be explored in this season with Alicent. Didn't feel like her character arc was over for the season. A lot of those just kind of major characters didn't really feel like they were in that natural spot of ending it. Maybe Aegon and Larys, like them escaping King's Landing, maybe that felt pretty concluded. But for the most part, it kind of left a sour taste in your mouth. Like, not much truly happens in the last 4 episodes in terms of the plot moving, in terms of characters moving, in terms of their like motivations and over their inner conflicts. So I do think in terms of the actual season and how it's viewed, it really was affected by those 2 episodes not being there. And especially if one of those episodes was going to be the Battle of the Gullet, and then looking at the after effects of the Battle of the Gullet, I think if that would have been in this season, we would have looked at this season much more positively. Because, you know, spoilers for what's going to happen in the story. So if you don't want to hear spoilers for what's going to happen in season 3, again, I would probably leave at this point. But if you think about what we see in the book where you have the Battle of the Gullet, there's a lot of stuff that happens there. And you also think about where Rhaena leaves off, right? We don't even see her get on Sheepstealer or claim Sheepstealer really in season 2. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of moving parts as to what's going to happen. Are they going to do the stuff where Rhaenyra's kids end up getting like intersected by parts of the Triarchy's fleet? And that ends up having a huge ramifications on Rhaenyra as a character, and actually the character of Aegon, who is Rhaenyra's oldest son by Daemon, who was last seen with like Rhaena and leaving the Vale. And so how is that plot going to go down? Will Jace be involved in that? There's just a lot of things that could have happened if the season had 2 more episodes that would have left the season on a more complete and interesting way of going into season 3. Because we kind of end off in the same position that we were in at the beginning of this season, where it seems like the war is starting, right? Because in this season, we didn't really see the war kick off. And I don't even mean like showing us the war. I mean like the war just in general. Like, we see a couple battles with Criston Cole, but they're not really battles. Like, Criston Cole has more forces than the other person easily. It's more like Criston Cole's just winning a couple skirmishes trying to bait out Rhaenyra. And then we see the Battle of Rook's Rest. The Riverlands, we see kind of one battle, but that's not even really part of the whole war, really. It's just between the Brackens and Blackwoods. So it's not even really almost between the Blacks and the Greens. It kind of is, but it's kind of not at the same time. It's really just their family feud. We hear like rumblings of stuff going on the Reach, but it doesn't seem like we have any indication as to what's going on there. If you're like a just a show watcher, you really don't know what's happening there. You just know there's this guy called Daron with a dragon, and it seems like there's maybe some sort of like uprising going on in the Reach, but it's not specified. So I think having a Battle of the Gullet where you finally see it's that payoff, right, of the dragon seeds, you know, that whole plot line that comes to life in the Battle of the Gullet, while also seeing Jace and his kind of arc being concluded. I don't really think they've done a great job with Jace in this season, but still he's a character that is kind of like Rhaenys, where maybe not the best character, but it's still a character you like. So that would have had a really impactful death, losing Rhaenys and Jace in one season. How would that have affected Rhaenyra? I do think that if those 2 episodes had been there, we would have had, I think, a more of a complete season. Now, is the season saved? No, there's still plenty of issues in season 2 that would have brought this season down for me. Could the Battle of the Gullet, if they had done it right, and the stuff after the Battle of the Gullet, like taking of King's Landing, could that have actually made the season better for me? Yeah, it could have made the season go from like a 6 to a 7. I still don't think that would have brought it above season 1 because there's just too many problems in terms of the episodes from episode 5 to 8. And even the problems from those episodes kind of now trickled down to the episodes of like episodes 1 through 4. And even episode 3 is not great either. I think that it would have improved it, but it wouldn't have solved the issues, right? And I know people don't agree with me on this. So again, it's just how your perspective is. But for me, Daemon didn't have much of a character arc, if at all. Like, he did have one, and then they ruined it at the very end. And I want to address this for people that kind of comment this on some of my videos that I've talked about Daemon. My core argument for why Daemon was not that good in this season is, okay, so episode 1, episode 2, you know, he's kind of interesting, but then he goes on a character, like, this is a complete character analysis of Daemon. It's him, you know, with these visions, self-reflecting on his actions from season 1. It's him trying to figure out who he is. Not exactly a redemption arc, but a discovery. Like, what is Daemon going to be moving forward in this war? And how that's going to change him. And so we see that all the way through, and then into episode 7 and 8, well, there's no payoff to it. There's no payoff at all. He doesn't do anything with the, like, Riverland Lords. And that's all goes down to Oscar Tully, and he basically gets bullied the whole time and then forced to kill Willem, which is a key point. Given that Daemon does not do it on his own will, he's forced to. If he doesn't, he's going to lose the River Lords. So he had to do it. He was forced into it. It's not something that Daemon himself thought was right to do because of the war crimes. And then the other part of it is just, of course, if you take into effect the conversation he has with Broom about basically declaring himself as king and going against Rhaenyra, he doesn't, like, discount Broom at all. He doesn't, like, say, no, that's not right, I'm going to go for Rhaenyra. There's no, like, payoff to him thinking, okay, you know what, now I figured it out. I'm going to go for Rhaenyra because it's the right thing to do. It's who Viserys chose, and this is the person that could be a really good queen. None of that occurs. We see this vision basically brings it down to just fate. And so that's my argument, right? Because the fate thing then says, okay, Daemon goes to Rhaenyra, not because of his own thinking, it's because of fate, that there is no other option, that Rhaenyra is going to be queen. He can't fight that. And so my argument is, okay, if you put that right after Rhaenyra and Daemon fight, and let's just say he goes into another room and he gets this vision, what changes? What changes if you just remove Daemon from the Harrenhal arc at all and just give him one vision that he has in episode 8, in episode 2? He would realize, okay, fate says that Rhaenyra is going to be queen, so then Rhaenyra is going to be queen. Like, nothing changed. And so you have that issue. The Alicent issue also would still be rampant in this episode. Alicent basically sells out her entire family and her love as well in Criston Cole. That still would be a jarring issue, because how are they going to go about the taking of King's Landing? In the book, it was actually the strategic thing, you know, bait Aemond out. They basically used the Rook's Rest strategy on Aemond, so it's really reflective. It's like Jaime, how he starts to kind of learn from his loss from Robb in the main story. And so they bait Aemond out, and then they kind of maneuver around him. So now that there's no dragon really protecting King's Landing, they then take King's Landing. Well, here, it's made to be completely different. It's not because of Daemon's battle strategy. It's not because of, you know, Rhaenyra or Corlys or anybody. It's because Alicent just gives it to them and tells them Aemond's plan. So you see the difference, right? It discounts the intrigue there. It discounts what characters are doing to even, like, do that, right? Like, you could see it as, okay, well, Rhaenyra still doesn't trust Daemon, right? Because of what he's been doing the whole season. And so Daemon makes up for it, and he creates this plan to get Rhaenyra on the throne to prove to her that he is backing her now. She is the queen. And so even some of maybe the issues that I have with the season could have been not as bad, because if we saw in the season then that Daemon is the one completely responsible for Rhaenyra sitting the throne, that could have had an interesting payoff. But because it did the Alicent thing, it kind of screws up Daemon's arc, it screws up her arc, it screws up Rhaenyra's arc. Just a lot of issues that these 8 episodes had, and so I kind of pushed back on this argument that giving the show 2 more episodes would have made this season so much better. It would have made it slightly better. I agree. I think that it would have taken probably the season from a 6 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10. It would have been a little bit more digestible. I wouldn't have been as maybe harsh on it, but that's what we got. And you also got to question some of the writing decisions that were made, even when they had the 10 episodes. Like, I'm assuming we got basically 8 episodes of that 10. Like, they didn't really condense it to then get those other 2 episodes in there. A lot of it wasn't that great. So there was a lot of weird writing decisions. And I even think about it now, as I'm reflecting and thinking about where the story goes, I almost feel like you could have condensed episode 5 and 6 into almost one episode. You could have maybe, I don't know about episode 7 and 8, but you could have maybe squeezed in the Battle of the World right at the end, but I don't think maybe they didn't have the budget. I don't know. I'm not in HBO's meetings and all that stuff, but again, major point of this video that I want to tell to you guys is that I don't think 2 episodes would have made this season significantly better. I think it would have been slightly better, but it still had too many issues that are already ingrained into the series now. For me, honestly, Daemon is broken. Alicent's broken. They don't function. Rhaenyra had no character arc of this season, really. She had very little minor things, but they don't really push her character to being that different from her at the beginning of the season. So, yeah, that is my thoughts on the 2 episodes being missing. It was a factor in this season, but it wasn't the thing that made it bad. But thank you guys all for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.